Welcome to the first video on thinking like a programmer. But before we get going, please see the video on the second-hand bookshop scenario, because what we're doing here relies on that. You'll find the link just below this video. My name's Andy Wicks, and the first video in this series looks at the basic techniques you need to write a program. The approach so far has been like learning, say, carpentry. Here's a hammer and this is how you drive in a nail. This is a saw and you use it like this. In other words, it's just been showing you a tool without any chance for you to play with them. Or even worse, let you see how to build something with them. So how do you go about writing a program? Well, most non-programmers think that programming is just learning a lot of clever commands that make the computer do their bidding after a few taps of keys. Programmers are set a problem, sit down in the late morning, and then have the finished product later that day. Easy. Well, none of this is true. Programmers start by creating a plan in their heads. Failure to plan is planning to fail. There are formal planning techniques which you'll learn, but a general tactic is not to start at the beginning. If you start at the beginning and then get stuck, you've hit your first roadblock and you can't go anywhere else. But if you start in the middle, then there are two directions in which you can travel. If you start in several places, then there are lots of directions in which you can work. And then it's just a matter of knitting all the bits together. And that's what we're going to do with this scenario. If you have a problem, cheat intelligently, and the emphasis is on the intelligently. The way I do things is that I tend to have a think about what matters most and the easiest place to start. Then I write a throwaway version of the program, or part of the program, so that I can see what the problems are. In this case, I know I need to get the book information handled correctly before I worry about what the user sees, the user interface. So that's where I'll start. Well, I've whacked in some code. Shall we take a look? With this code, I'm trying to do two tasks. I want to set up some temporary information about books, and I'd like to do a little task such as printing the total value of the volume of books that we've got. So the first thing to notice is that we have errors. Does this matter? No, not at all. What matters is that you know that there are errors and that you correct them. The computer doesn't care whether there are errors or not at this stage. We're still in development mode. Now, for those who know a bit about programming, you'll know that this isn't the best way to create this data. But don't worry about it. That will all become a lot better in later videos. So let's have a look at these errors. First of all, you can see that we've got these red dashes at the side here, and that shows us where the errors are. Now, the first thing that I've got is value 1 equals £4. Silly me, I didn't mean £4. I know that there's no pounds thing. So what I'll do is I'll take that pound sign out. And now it's happy. So obviously I have to do that with each of the others. Now that I've done that, I'm down to just 3 errors. Well, what are those 3 errors? There's one red underline. Okay, type 3. Well, we've got type 1, type 2 and type 3. That looks fine. I mean, what could possibly be wrong there? And this gives an example of the sort of things that we programmers do all the time. What we do is we spend hours trying to find some complicated reason why type 3 should be something special when it isn't. What's happened is that I've forgotten to put in the equal sign. If I put in the equal sign, then that goes away. That problem is gone. And so now I've got that line of code working. And it's those simple errors that are the really difficult ones to find. But I've still got an error. It says value 1 plus value 2, and it doesn't like value 2, and yet I've definitely got a value 2. As you can see here, value 2 definitely exists. So where has it gone wrong? Well, it's gone wrong in that the casing is wrong. We need to have the whole variable name in exactly the right way. As you'll notice, for this second book here, I've got all the variables starting with an uppercase letter. And PEP 8 says uppercase letters aren't used for the start of variable names. So let me put that right. It's always best, by the way, to start at the bottom when you're doing things that are in line. Okay, I now have that error gone, and it looks as if this is fine. No errors, no warnings, everything is happy. And I've got a little green tick at the top as well. Life is good. But there is another problem. I've called these books, but that's fine for a paperback and hardback, but what about magazine? And you think, well, does that really matter? We can just call a magazine a book. But that gets confusing in some places in your program where you're only handling magazines. What we should come up with is a better name for this variable. So I'd prefer to call it something like an item. Now, I'm not stuck on the word item. That can be whatever it is you want it to be. But it should be something that would allow all the pieces, all the different types, to be described by the same word. If you get the description right, you'll get the program working so much more easily. Always use names that describe exactly what it is that this variable contains. And it doesn't matter if the name is a bit longer. As you've seen in PyCharm, if you start to type the name of something, that comes up. So even a long name can be typed in very quickly and easily. So let's see this program running. I'll right click and run. And it says the total value is £9.75. We've got a bookshop.